So, what if the secret to real success wasn't about taking, but about giving? That's the super provocative idea behind The Go-Giver. It's a book that's become this huge global movement, but it's also the source of some pretty serious debate. So let's get into it and see what all the buzz is about. It's this really powerful, kind of counterintuitive idea that's right at the heart of the book. We live in a world that so often feels like a nonstop competition, right? Well, the Go Giver just flips that whole script and asks us to completely rethink the game of success. The book really frames the whole thing around these two different mindsets. On one side, you've got the classic go-getter. And we all know this type. They're laser focused on the sale, the win, the bottom line. But then you have the go-giver. Their main focus is on providing value, on helping other people, and on putting their interests first. And here's the book's radical argument. The go-giver is the one who actually comes out on top in the long run. And the way the authors get this idea across is through a story, a little parable. We meet this guy Joe, a salesman who is just having a terrible quarter. He's a classic go-getter. He's hustling like crazy, but he feels like the harder he works, the farther away his goals get. So, out of desperation, he goes to this legendary consultant, who then introduces him to a whole series of mentors who are about to completely change his world. And this new perspective, it all boils down to a central framework. Now, these aren't just tips or tricks. They're presented as these fundamental, almost universal laws that govern success. All right, so here they are, the 5 laws of stratospheric success. We've got value, compensation, influence, authenticity, and receptivity. Now, each one kind of builds on the one before it, creating this whole philosophy for doing business and really, as the book argues, for just living your life. So let's break them down. Okay, so this first law, it's the foundation for everything else. It's not about giving just enough to justify what someone's paying you. It's about striving to deliver a way higher quality of service, a better experience, and more genuine care than any amount of money could ever really cover. The goal is to just blow their expectations out of the water. And this quote, it just perfectly nails the problem with how we usually think. We so often expect a return before we're willing to give anything. We want the heat before we provide the fuel. The law of value says you have to put the logs on the fire first and trust that the heat is going to follow. So, if that first law is all about the quality of your giving, the second law is about the quantity, the scale of it. It argues that your financial success is directly tied to how many lives you touch. You want to earn more? Well, find a way to serve more people and serve them incredibly well. This one's all about building your network. But listen, this is not about keeping score or networking just for your own personal gain. Real influence, the kind that creates what the book calls an army of personal walking ambassadors, comes from genuinely, truly caring about the other person's success. As the book says, givers attract. In this idea, this is where it gets really radical. We're all so trained to think in terms of win-win. This law just pushes it a step further. It's like, forget about your win for a second. If you focus entirely on making sure the other person succeeds, your own interests will kind of take care of themselves. It's a principle some people call enlightened self-interest. All right, law number 4. This one argues that all the sales techniques and clever closing tactics in the world are basically worthless if they aren't built on a foundation of you just being real. One of the characters in the story realizes, after failing with every sales trick in the book, that what people really, truly want is just a genuine connection. And this is basically the math behind that law. The book makes this incredibly bold claim that success is almost entirely about your ability to connect with other people, human to human. And like one character says, if you want great people skills, the secret is simple. Then be a person. And the final law, this one completes the circle. The authors argue that trying to only give and never receive anything back, well, it's not just foolish, it's actually kind of arrogant. It denies other people their own right to give. Receiving isn't selfish, it's just the natural result of giving. Kind of like inhaling is the natural result of exhaling. You have to stay open to it. So that's the philosophy. It sounds like a simple, feel-good message. But how has it actually been received out in the real world? Well, that's where things start to get a little more complicated. First off, let's just be clear, this book is an absolute phenomenon. With over 850,000 copies sold, it spawns sequels and an entire movement. Lots of people absolutely swear by these principles, saying it's not just a business book, but a guide to a better life. But then you have the other side. A pretty significant number of readers find the book's whole parable style to be, as this reviewer put it, unrealistic, contrived drivel. The simple story and the happy ending strike some people as simplistic and childish, just completely disconnected from the harsh realities of the business world. And this really gets to the heart of the debate, right? On one hand, you have this beautiful philosophy of generosity and value. But on the other hand, you have a world that often seems to reward ruthless competition. So is the go-giver philosophy just a naive fantasy, or is it a profound truth? So, digging into the critiques, a few themes pop up over and over again. Some people find it has that rah-rah, high-fiving American business fable style. Others point out that, hey, it's a parable. It's designed to inspire you, not be a detailed roadmap. A big one is that it kind of preaches to the choir. It's great for people who already believe in giving, but maybe not for a hardened go-getter. And then there's that final point on the list, which has stirred up the most controversy by far. So here's the deal. The book has become a go-to recommendation inside many multi-level marketing companies, or MLMs. As you'll see people point out on places like Reddit, recruiters will often use the book's really positive message about building relationships and serving others to draw people into what can be pretty unethical, pyramid-like structures. So let's be super clear. While the book itself isn't a scam, its noble ideas have definitely been co-opted. And all of this brings us to the core tension of the go-giver philosophy, what we're calling the giver's dilemma. The co-author, Bob Burg, actually clarified what he meant in an interview. The focus should always be on serving others, on creating value. Money, he says, is just the echo of that value. It's the reward you get for hitting the real target, which is making a positive impact. At the end of the day, the book's whole argument is that these two goals aren't in conflict. It claims that being a go-giver isn't about charity. It's actually the smartest, most strategic path to long-term success, to referrals, and to repeat business. And yet, we just can't ignore the controversy. The exact same principles of building trust and focusing on others' needs can be twisted. A tool that's designed for genuine connection can, in the wrong hands, become a tool for really subtle manipulation. And that leaves all of us with the final critical question. The philosophy itself sounds amazing, but in practice, how do we tell the difference between authentic generosity and a really calculated ploy? When you're on the receiving end, how do you know? That's the line every single one of us has to navigate for ourselves.